Hey everybody, welcome to video 19.4 to 19.5. This video lecture is going to be really short. There was just a few specific things that I wanted to touch on from 19.4 and from 19.5, so each of them are going to get a slide of their own here. So from 19.4, one thing I wanted to talk about were just a few of the factors that affect heart rate. Now, I'm not going to get into all of them. There were many more. These are just four major ones that you should know, starting with adrenaline, otherwise known as epinephrine and its correspondent norepinephrine. Part of the fight or flight mechanism. Hopefully you are familiar with that. Just thinking about adrenaline and remembering that from Unit 5. But what epinephrine is going to do, it's going to increase the amount of sodium and calcium that are flowing into those heart muscle cells. And you remember that you need both sodium and calcium in order for action potentials to flow, as well as for as part of the sliding filament theory to get the actin and myosin to be able to bond with one another, so that higher levels of sodium and calcium are going to increase the rate at which your heart is contracting. Thyroid hormone, specifically thyroxine, is going to be another one that increases heart rate. It's going to enter the heart muscle cell and it's going to stimulate the heart muscle to contract faster, starting at the DNA level. So actually you have genes in your DNA that will specify how fast your heart should beat. If you think back to biology, that central dogma going from DNA to RNA to protein, that thyroid hormone is actually going to speed up that central dogma, leading to those proteins that are causing the heart to contract. Calcium, we mentioned this with epinephrine, but also just high levels of calcium can increase your heart rate. And how it does this is it's going to shorten the time between the Q of the QRS complex and the T wave. We'll get to the cardiac cycle in the next video, video 47 on the high school side, and the next one for dual credit here. But that time between the Q and T, called the QT interval, is going to be shortened. And so because of that, basically your heart rate, a single heartbeat, is happening faster. And so that means your heart can beat faster because each heartbeat doesn't take quite nearly as long. But high levels of calcium can actually lead to myocardial infarctions. And then nicotine and caffeine are both also going to increase your heart rate. Caffeine is going to increase the rate that the sinoatrial node is going to fire, so you're just getting more faster impulses, telling that heart to beat. And then nicotine will do the same thing, but it's going to be affecting the cardiovascular centers in the medulla. So all of these high levels are going to increase your heart rate, and then you can think of it also less of them is going to decrease your heart rate. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on from 19.5 was embryonic development of the heart. The heart's going to be one of the first things to form. It's going to arise out of the mesoderm about 18 days after fertilization. It will start beating about 21 days after fertilization. So you can actually have a heartbeat about 3 weeks after fertilization. You'll start to get the beginnings of chambers and blood vessels moving into position between days 23 and 28. So that's getting us into week 4 here. The atria and ventricles are going to separate from one another by the end of week 5, although, like we talked in fetal circulation, on the high school portion side, you are going to have those shunts allowing blood to pass between the sides, since when you are in utero, you aren't actually breathing any air. You'll get the valves to form within that heart between weeks 5 and 9. I'm trying to remember, one of them forms between weeks 5 and 8, the other between 5 and 9, but I don't remember AV or SA or AV valves or the semi-SL valves, which is which there. And heartbeats are going to be detectable on ultrasound usually between weeks 6 and 8. So you do actually have a heartbeat by around the end of week 3, but it's going to be so weak and so soft that you aren't going to be able to detect it on an ultrasound until between weeks 6 and 8. So those are just a couple of things that I wanted to mention from those two sections, 19.4 and 19.5. So if you have any questions on those, let me know.